Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Reiner, so much, and to all of you for coming. Thank you so much. I have some new friends back there. I know all these other people. But Reiner, I want to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to say, hey, would you do this? And when he invited me to come, it was somebody couldn't do it for some reason. So I said, oh, you know, every time I have a show, I say yes, yes, but I want to be able to make it work, you know? And it wasn't a lot of time, but I thought, okay, I think I can, yes, this is a really good opportunity for me to do this. I just kind of felt that it was really, really important to do it. And out of it, if you had not have invited me, I think out of it, I wouldn't be at the place I am now. So I thank you very much. I really do. So as I say to my students, I have some students here, always find the potential in everything you do, everything, or what happens to you. Find the potential in it. Don't go, ooh, you know, you can for a while, but then say, okay, let's pick up and go. Let's pick up and go, right? So I am, as Reiner pointed out, I'm an artist. I have a website, JENPEPPER.com, real easy. I show around the world. And as you can see, I work in a lot of different materials. I work in sculpture, I work in installation, I work in drawing, I work in found materials, I write, I do whatever. I do what I think is necessary for my work. And I was raised as a painter through my master's, but then when I moved to New York City, I kind of went to sculpture, which was very foolish because sculpture needs space, and space in New York City is money, right? So anyway, so I've been here, so I just was really, really thrilled to, I guess, go through what I had gone through, and that I often fall back on this idea, and it was actually from a old faculty member, because I was a student at Munson, right, many, many years ago. And one of my instructors told me when I was painting that, you know, you are a really good painter. And of course I was young, and I was like, oh, yeah, he's my hero, this guy's my hero. And so he said, don't you want to know why I said that? And I said, yes, 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 please. I'll just call him Bob. Bob, I'd like to know why. And he said, because you paint like a man. And that kind of stumped me. I'm like, well, I'm not a man, and I don't even know what another woman paints. I can only paint from the self, right? So we, you know, and I'm a firm believer in that, but what I do, what I make, what I think about, what I speak to is I speak to my experience of living in the world, in the lived world, in the world that we're moving around in, right? So this is an exhibition a lot about perception. And in art school, and in art history, and through writing, and you know, the Renaissance forward, we see a lot of stuff about perception, you know, and how it works, and all these things. So I'm like, I'm going to tackle that because I love the idea of what the Renaissance gave to us, and we're taught these things in drawing, right, when we're beginning. This thing about looking through a grid. Right? Looking through a grid to the world beyond, to then draw that world beyond, onto canvas, onto paper, whatever. And that grid comes out of the Renaissance period, right? So if you look just behind you here, the Albertian, this is a Albrecht Dürer print, very, very famous Albrecht Dürer print. And but what he's using is what is called the Albertian window. So it's, you know, you can understand that we're looking through a point at a figure, at the model here, going up her, you know, right, her crotch, frankly, And looking at her, she has to stay still, the artist has to stay still, and that thing in front of the eyeball is so that you don't shift your body in any direction, because as soon as you shift, you're going to get another viewpoint. And something that until I started really reading about this concept, these ideas that they were doing, they actually, you can kind of see it in that drawing, there are little pulleys that they attach themselves to with like a belt, so they can feel if they're moving one way or another. They kind of keep you in place. But the fact of the matter is, that's not how the world works, right? It's a good way to begin drawing, to say, okay, I'm going to represent this thing out there onto this canvas or whatever it is, to make something exact. But it's all about illusion, right? It's all an illusion, illusion, illusion. So with my recent experience, it felt like an illusion. It felt very much like, a little bit like smoke and mirrors, What you think you're getting, you're not going to get. And these ideas of veiling. So I could have easily called this on, and I have a few notes, because I got to just read a couple of things from Alberti. I could have called this show on seeing and drawing from life. And a lot of my work is very much about concept. I take a situation, or I think about a situation a lot, and I respond to that situation. So as I said, this is about perception and about seeing that we don't just see with our eyes, we really see with our entire bodies, right? We see the world with our entire bodies, and sometimes our eyes come first, or our body will come second, but it's all in a collective, right? It's not something that, oh, I see and I understand. It takes a long time to understand, and that understanding often shifts, right? It keeps changing and changing. So, but something so Leon, his first name was Leon Alberti, and from about 1435. So this is the 15th century in Italy. And he realized that when closing one eye, right, you could kind of fix a thing. You can shut down space, make it flat, and then draw it or whatever onto a flat piece of paper or canvas, two-dimensional. But as I said, the world isn't that way, right? It's a good way to begin. But then what I am thinking about is taking those ideas and well, what are they trying to do? What are they trying to do? But what we understand with the Renaissance is they were often trying to understand the world scientifically, looking at the classical world and this new kind of religion called Christianity, right? And putting all these things together. So he was doing that, and a lot of the individuals from right after that period, different individuals were working with these types of devices in order to work. So he realized by closing one eye, okay, and this is what he wrote. This is what I wanted to say to you, okay? These are his words translated to English. It is like this: a veil loosely woven as a with fine thread, divided up for thicker threads into as many parallel square sections as you like. Then it's stretched on a canvas. You can kind of see it in that painting. I set this up between the eye and the object to be represented. So we're talking about representation now. So that the visual pyramid from the eyes shoots out, right, onto that subject. Okay. Or it goes that way as well. So that the visual pyramid passes through the loose weave of the veil. He called it a veil. This intersectionality of the veil has many advantages. First of all, because it always presents the same surface unchanged. static. For once, you have a fixed, and he calls it a fixed position, the position for the outlines to be drawn. You can immediately find the apex of the pyramid or the object you have started with, which is extremely difficult to do without this intersection. And the apex is the artist's eye. We are the apex looking up, right? So thank you for giving me that opportunity to talk a little bit about Alberti, his words. But I'm responding, what is a veil? You know, what is intersections? What is representation? So it's the idea of what are those concepts to me, because I'm experiencing in my lifetime, I've got to understand those things. There is not one. Everyone else will have their own possible ideas about these things, right? But it is the idea that for me, I was questioning what is a veil. A veil conceals, you know, I don't know, a wedding veil, say. It conceals something. What does it conceal? What is behind the veil? We don't know. We want to look in, you know, behind the big green or red curtain of the Wizard of Oz, right? Who is the Wizard of Oz? So I respond, what is a veil? It's something that conceals. What does it conceal? Does it conceal experience? Does it conceal truth? Does it conceal something alive? Conceals an otherwise liveliness. It often softens, oftentimes. A veil often softens what is behind it to possibly, I don't want to say use the word protect, but to lessen something in high contrast. Yes. So the grid itself, as I said, breaks things down into these little bits and bytes, like pixels of the computerized generation, right? And so that we can see all these little parts instead of seeing the whole. And the modernists, you know, from the 20th century, that's what they did. They kind of laid, not an actual grid, but the idea of this grid on the world, say, well, this is this and this is that, and kind of follow the language that they were understanding, right? But thankfully, with postmodernism, and when you think of modernism, you know, something rises up, and that is the thing we look at. That is the art piece or the concept or the traditions that are at the forefront. When postmodernism happens, right, 60s forward, diversity can happen. Yay! All right? That's what we say. So I was really trying to kind of just really work, you know, as I always do. When something, you know, I work, and I can, as I said, I can only work from my own experience. So oftentimes when I'm starting something, I just start drawing. That's my first thing. I just draw. And I don't think about it like, oh wow, look at this beautiful drawing I've made, because you can see they look like they're out of my sketchbook, right? They're like notes to myself. And a lot of individuals, and you can also see the drawings over here, I also work in text, in language, with language, English language. And people might not see that connection between perception and experience with language. But if you looked at my sketchbooks, they're usually just all writing. They're just writing. And I'm so fascinated by language because of when you take it out of, it needs context to be understood. So that, like, you know, perception itself, things kind of, if they don't have their context, they can mean many, multiple things, right? So that's what I like about it, because it's very malleable, just like the idea of perception is malleable. Like the idea of the Albertian window or the veil, they often call it the Albertian window or the Albertian's veil, is being malleable. And so with this piece, I'm just going to talk now a little bit about each piece, not each one, a few of them. So it's a Dürer etching that I captured, then digitized, then printed onto fabric. I didn't do any drawing. Machine and me. Then stretched it. Then started painting on it, and like you'll see, like a lot of actual physicality of paint, because I wanted the physicality of paint. This is nothing but paint on a surface. Picasso once said, painting is a lie. Very famous quote by Picasso. Or if you read Derrida, Jacques Derrida, The Truth in Painting, what is the truth in painting? Canvas, or whatever you're working with. That's the truth. It's not the representation. But so, you know, somebody like, why'd you leave that smear there? Well, that's why I left that smear there, very intentional. And then I just started layering up, just monochromatically, Talia. And then in the grid, that's a little nod to one of my heroes, Mondrian, Piet Mondrian. And frankly, it's just the primaries, you know, if you know Piet Mondrian's paintings and you follow his work from early to late. I mean, he was doing representational things, and then he just got down to squares and primary colors in white and black. So when you think about that, frankly, you have everything. You have a curve, you don't have just straight lines, and you have every color of the universe, right? So so that was that little bit of a nod to that. And then people sometimes wonder what these cups are. These are, I collect them. I did not make them. I buy them. I buy a lot of things. You just sometimes stick it on the wall, just like Duchamp. Good old Duchamp. He taught me that. I take a snow shovel and put it on the wall and call it in advancement of a broken arm. Okay, I love that piece. It's one of my favorites. But anyway, what these are, old and new, they plastic and mostly glass. I never knew they existed really until I'm always on the computer kind of researching. They're for eye wash. People still use these instead of this. You know, I do the little capsules that you do. They put their eye wash in there and you'll see that they actually, some of them actually fit on your eye, like the small part and the larger part. So they're kind of not, they're a little asymmetrical. So, but the idea of an eye wash, we're always thinking about, or I am, my eyes always constantly have to be washed. And that too is like the kind of the taking in of the observation of what I see into my body and allowing it to be to dwell in my body. So it kind of gets back to what I was saying about, I see perception to me is with my whole body. And I don't, you know, if you read any phenomenology, they would agree with me. That's how I see the world, or understand the world, with everything going. So that's what these are. The marble pieces, I carve marble. I love stone. I always, do you need some water? No, thank you. I carve marble, and I have, since I was a child, I always picked up rocks. So now I'm starting to carve. Oh, she has some with her. I don't think she does. Anyway, so I go to a place in Vermont and I carve there and I pull back stone, etc. But what you'll see is like on this piece, the eyeball with the E, kind of like and it's kind of in a triangular form, like, the all same eye on your dollar bill. Behind the black piece, people sometimes don't recognize what that is, and it's understandable because it needs context. It's the skin of a stingray, small stingray. And so I just took, plastic lettering and laid utter history in there. Is the idea of what is utter history? Like, oh my gosh, it's so huge, it's so massive, it's got so much weight, but also to utter history. What is history? Tell me. You should utter history, right? And then these pieces, these glass pieces, these are what they're put onto are vintage, these two, motorcycle glasses, so they have screens in them so the bugs don't go through and hit their eyes. right? And these are all old safety glasses with glass lenses. So the one behind is quartz crystal. So this idea of like how we see is always kind of shooting out. It's not so much a cone, which is just like this direction, but it's shooting out in all directions. And the crystals in marble, in granite, you'll see anything that's sparkly, that's usually a quartz crystal, and it's energy. Quartz is energy. You put them in quartz watches. A lot of people, you know, have them around the house. They put them on their bodies as energy, right? So I kind of tap into that, and I understand that bodily, like when I'm touching stone. Yeah. This one this is called Druze. It's a rock formation when water just goes over stone over a period of time. It drops these types of small crystals, and they keep growing. So it's this idea, it's not the world, the earth is not static, it's constantly moving, right? And then this is again quartz. But it's this idea of like seeing, and probably very personal to me, of seeing stone as an energy form. The piece behind Max there is a Vermont, no, it's okay. It's from West Rutland. It's marble, it's gray marble. They have anywhere from gray to white. And then I've actually embedded crystals, Czechoslovakian glass crystals, so they flash. You know, I love things with a little bit of sparkle because of the idea that something's always kind of sparking, flashing, glimpsing. Then in the back, I think of that a little bit, that white one. I think of it as both of these are on granite from Vermont. But that piece it's called Thoughts Throughout the Day. But as I said to my students last time when you were here, I think of it as fat brain. That we get so full of ideas, it's like, I feel like, what would my brain look like if it was really fat with ideas, you know? So I was really wanting to get that really fat. And the fact that it's in high contrast, right? It's marble, it's hard, I'm making it look soft, etc. And this, Purkinje. This is called Purkinje. I don't know if you know what Purkinje is, anybody? Purkinje, so these are glass beads, and this is sheepskin. So I just kind of wove it. I'm also a fiber person. I was kind of raised in weaving. As I say to people, that was the way my mother kept me off the streets as a child. I wove. You know, you can't go out. You're bad. But anyway, it's called Purkinje. And what Purkinje is, it often happens, I'm sure you've experienced this in the summertime, at about dusk, just when it's, you know, kind of flipping over. And if we're in the really right conditions, it's when the idea of seeing, what do you see when you look at like a plant, say, hibiscus plant, with red petals and green leaves. In the daytime it looks like this, but at this certain time, things flip in your brain. And through your eyesight, you understand it. It's called Purkinje after the man that invented it. And what you start seeing, especially in living plants, living things, is there's a kind of a glow. And people often call it the golden hour, I think, right? And there's often this glow. It has nothing to do with you. Well, it does. It has something to do with what you're looking at to you. So that idea of these intersections. Yeah? And then the piece on the back is kind of a response to, it's another digital print, to the idea of that cone that Alberti was speaking about. And this is an illustration by a Renaissance architect that was trying to illustrate this for all of his architecture, architects around him, etc. But I often work with chain for different reasons. But the chain is on the different points of where you would see those lines that are my favorite word. I always say to my first first year people, they're called orthogonals in linear perspective. And so that now the chain is just representing the orthogonals that have now dropped, right? They're off the canvas and dropping off. And they are actually affixed to the canvas with magnets, so I can move them anywhere on that canvas or let them all drop on the floor. So the idea that is nothing, for me, I want to speak about things that are not static, that have the potentiality of something else to occur, right? And I think, yeah, and then, you know, as I said, I often just sit and draw. This piece of the blue painting is that kind of that idea of the cone in which we, you know, look and see the world. So sometimes you see the cone going this way in illustrations, sometimes going the other way. But I love this idea of flattening, like what happens, like you're no longer three-dimensional, you become flat like a flounder. And, you know, what are we looking at is off the canvas. If this is a big lie, right? That's not how the world is, but we're pointing. And Max and I have this kind of running thing about pointing and direction. And 53 is a number that a lot of people look to as the 5 is the idea of finding potential, and 3 as being creative. And so sometimes, like, it was weird when I was painting this. I saw a man, he was fishing close to where I was at, and he had this baseball hat on, and it said 53. I'm like, 53. I didn't understand what 53 was, so it took me a while, but and then I started like going down another rabbit hole, you know? So all of those things, you know, it's just sometimes it's just being in the world and experiencing the world as I do, and I just start paying attention to things, you know?
So what's the mask on top?
They're eyes that are closed, the silicone, another purchase of mine. I didn't make them. But their eyes are closed. So what we're seeing, maybe we need to close our eyes and to think about it, you know? And so, yeah, so that's what those are all about. And I think, yeah, and these drawings here, they have Mylar on them so that when you're looking at them one way, they look like this. When you're looking at them another way, they look like that. And Naomi Pitts. This is a drawing that I've had for about 20 years. I've taught like little kids, big kids, old kids, really young kids. She was probably about 5. And I've kept that drawing for all this time. I love that drawing because she, you know, when a child starts learning language, they like to lay it down on a drawing. You know, this is mom, and points the arrow. So symbols, signs, signifiers, semiotics, rocks in wind. It's like, I thought that really captured the whole show for me, brought Naomi Pitts. So I had to bring Naomi in with me. I don't know where Naomi is now, but she was just incy-bincy. But I did have to bring Naomi Pitts. That is not for sale. That's my precious. But so I would really love to field some questions or thoughts about what you're seeing. What you're thinking about, if you'd like, anybody? Oh, and one last thing. Reiner, you said something at the opening about Play-Doh. Remember?
Yeah.
Would you like to say that? Because this was very, Reiner gets my work.
Yeah, I was referring to this quote of Plato from Parmenides' dialogues. If it's pronounced Parmenides in English. So Parmenides' dialogues is practically how Plato converses with one of his disciples. And he says, everything what you write down, a written word, is practically the manifestation of a human thought. And as soon as you put it on a piece of paper, it becomes the quality like a painting. So the painting means it can start its life independently from its author. And the person that originally had this thought and brought it to paper has not to be available anymore. Can be dead or and all this what he left behind is this thoughts on paper or on canvas, and it can be interpreted, it can be manipulated, it can be destroyed, it can be from the outside, and the author is practically not necessary to be present anymore.
So yeah, it lives its own life now out in the world, the author or the artist, whomever, the maker.
And this was came up in context with this Albrecht Dürer. They, in the Renaissance, they analyzed practically everything analytically, like how human body functions, for example, how seeing works, and this working with this grid. This was one of the first ideas. If you fixate your eyes here, look through a hole in a pole, and here through a window, so you cannot move your body. You have to look this fixated, then you get this fixated image of your model, for example, and it was the but you transfer this to your canvas, and you have the first idea of what we would say today pixelation or rasterization of an image, and you go from one little square to the next, and just concentrate what you see in this little square, and you are not trying to get the picture as a whole, so that you add it practically pixel by pixel. This was this idea in context with Plato.
Right. Thank you, Ryan. So, so we have some of the parts, but of course we experience everything all at once. They're trying to observe it analytically to understand it because it's so complex. Right? So,
I just want to add one thing. This technique actually is even can be observed in contemporary artists like Chuck Close, for example, who works with Chuck Close.
Did you go to West Rutland?
Yes.
I gathered marble there. I've got
oh, do you?
a cairn in front of my house that
Oh, nice. Yeah. They have a lot of, so you've been to the carving studio in West Rutland on Marble? Marble, oh, you must, go, for sure. Yeah, people from all over the world go. And in terms of, it's a magical place.
Oh.
Yeah. The granite, though, is from Barrie, up north. They say under West Rutland there's 5 miles of vein. And I'm like always saying, don't chomp, don't chomp. Cave in. There's a big hole underneath. Yeah. So, well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And so I hope you remain interested. And Gina.
I just have to admit what an idiot I am. When you first said, Ryder really gets my work, would you talk a little bit about Play-Doh? I was picturing Play-Doh in hands.
Valuable.
And
Perfect.
actually,
I make the condition.
the other stuff is sort of art speak to me, and Play-Doh, I can see you having fun, pushing, pulling, manipulating, much more than thinking about something's coming off the page. And you know.
No, and that's the thing. I mean, I work it's really hard for me to say. People will ask me, oh, what material? Or first of all, they ask me, are you a painter or sculptor? I'm like, I'm a maker. I don't know what I am. And then they'll say, well, what kind of materials do you work in? And then I start, video, rubber, ribs, what it takes. One of my favorite pieces in the whole wide world is Merritt Oppenheim's. I've there are excellent streams beneath this surface. She's saying there are excellent streams below this surface, is her Furline teacup
Mhm.
because of where it sends her.
Mhm.